The best Rangers podcast in town. I am Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis. We scream about the Rangers so that you don't have to. This is episode 59 live on Twitter, Twitch, and on YouTube. And we're available wherever you get your podcasts as well. Nick, well, Alex DeBrincat, former future New York Islander, huh?
The Islanders keep getting used for leverage, unfortunately, and Lou needs to stop getting his team's name involved in these rumors because eventually Ethan's going to kill him in his sleep.
Yeah, well, the thing about Alex DeBrincat too, and he's a really good player. Like my favorite part about Twitter are the people that pretend that they know everything about anything. Like, you know, next to the virology degree and the foreign policy degree, now they're experts in the Ottawa Senators, and I've watched all 82 games of Alex DeBrincat play hockey for them last year. It's like, you know, he's a really good offensive player, and he is exactly what Detroit's offense needs. Like, he's a really good 5-on-5 guy that will generate offense for them, and that's one of their problem areas, and, you know, he'll help there. And the Detroit Red Wings didn't give up a whole lot to go get him. I mean, they got a first-round pick, a fourth-round pick, some ECHL guy, and I forget who else. They got some middle six guy. That's about it. Like, they didn't really get a whole lot for him, and maybe their hands were tied because Alex DeBrincat allegedly only wanted to go to Detroit. So the back and forth, when you're only dealing with back and forth with one team, as Joe Crowder of the Portland Trailblazers will tell you, it's a lot harder when you only have one team to deal with. So Ottawa really didn't get a whole lot for him, and Alex DeBrincat's going to do wonders for the Detroit Red Wings.
Detroit's in that kind of weird position where they kind of probably thought they would be further along than they actually are right now. And it's good they finally got somebody who's genuinely good. Like, Alex DeBrincat is probably a top 40 player in the entire league, and Detroit doesn't have anybody of that caliber. I mean, last year their leading goal scorer was David Perron, who's like 33 years old. So they clearly needed to go out and get an impact player. This definitely gets them closer, but I still don't see anything grander. Maybe they can be one of the last teams in. Maybe they can be what the Islanders were this year, where they're just the best mediocre team, but they still don't really have that goaltending situation figured out. Mo Seider is good, yeah, but you want more from Lucas Raymond. Dylan Larkin's getting older. You've got Kopp, you've got Perron, now you've got DeBrincat. That's a decent group, but it doesn't really get them any closer to it. Gets them closer to a playoff team, which is, I guess, the next step. But you kind of feel like by this point that Yzerman would be a little bit further along. But like we were talking about before we started recording, they haven't gotten any ping pong ball luck. They haven't picked. I think the highest they've picked is third or fourth overall, and it's hard to get special players at that spot, especially when you're Detroit, who has a proclivity for drafting these guys who stay over in Europe for a few years before coming.
You know, the one thing that maybe people aren't bringing up as much is that the Devils are so, like, they almost have already acquired Connor Hellebuyck before they got him. What if Stevie Y is like, you know what? We have like 40 guys in the pipeline. Why don't we send a few over to Winnipeg? Let's get Connor Hellebuyck to Detroit. And now we've solved their goaltending issue. We got Alex DeBrincat. Maybe, like, I don't know. Maybe Detroit's cooking something. If they get Connor Hellebuyck, they won't be, you know, a cup favorite, but they'll definitely be in a lot better of a place than they are now. And they have a lot of, you know, resources to make that happen. Now, will Winnipeg do that trade? Would Connor Hellebuyck want to go to Detroit? Maybe he prefers New Jersey. I don't know. But maybe Stevie Y's got something cooking.
The problem with that is I'm cap friendly as we speak, and I'm doing the standing, which is why I'm looking at the floor as I'm doing it up on my. Okay, I thought they still had a third goalie, but they got Lee Husso for one more. James Reimers, they're going to be their backup for just this season, so it's not impossible. I thought they still had Nedeljkovic, who I forget where Ned is now. He got moved during the summer, but it's possible. Hellebuyck. I think the thing with the Devils, I was talking about this the other day with somebody. If I were the Devils, I'd be going full court press trying to get UC Saros because he's like 4 years younger. He's got 2 years of team control as opposed to one, and frankly,
good luck getting him.
The thing is, and this is also the counter. Probably should have blown it up instead of giving money to like Ryan O'Reilly and other guys who are decent, but they aren't getting them anywhere close to winning a championship. And I get why you throw money at those guys in that type of position where you got to have names on the jerseys to sell. You got to entice people to come out to see the team when you're so gate dependent, especially in a non-traditional market like Nashville. But that makes it complicated, to say the least. Nashville's in a weird. They definitely can't bottom out because their market will just stop showing up versus some of the other markets that'll be a little more open-minded to a I don't want to call it tanking, but yeah, effectively tanking.
Yeah, well, the problem with Nashville, and you're right in terms of David Poile was really good at treading water for 25 years.
Career.
His entire career, they made one final? His entire tenure, he was a mastermind of just get to the playoffs, and then that's it. Like that was the goal, is to just make it. So the Predators are really good at doing that, of treading water and then just kind of hoping to see what happens. So for the Predators to do this again, like Barry Trotz, listen, like if you want UC Soros from the Predators, you're gonna have to give up. You're the key to the city, 7 first-round picks. Like from what I understand, the Predators are more willing to move Askarov than they are,
which is insane.
Than they are moving UC Soros. Now, like if there's arguments to be made for both sides as to whether or not they're right and they're wrong. The thing about it is that UC Soros right now is a top 5 goalie in the league, and it's not like he's 36, so he still has a long leash to kind of play with. Will the Predators be doing what the Rangers did with Lundqvist, where they had a great goalie, not a whole lot of help in front of them, and then they just tread water because their goaltender is that good? Like they've really stolen that blueprint from the Rangers in terms of just like, we have this exceptional goalie that can do everything for us, but he also can't score goals, so we lose games because, sad face, he can't also score goals. Like that's exactly what Nashville is doing. So now, you bring in Ryan O'Reilly, you buy out Duchesne, which was a surprise to everybody, including Matt Duchesne. Like, no one thought this was going to happen until it did. So I don't think they're going to move UC Soros, and allegedly, according to some murmurs and whispers, that like they're more willing to move Askarov, which I don't know if that's the right decision for them, but he's absolutely tearing it up in the AHL right now. The Devils are going to get a goalie at some point. They do have options. Do they go for Askarov instead of Soros?
Nah, you can't do that if you're trying to win the cup. That's the thing. Like, if you're a team like the Devils, you couldn't do that. If you're a team that's on the way up, like let's say like a year from now, the Ducks thinks, okay, we're ready to kind of start making some noise, or you're Chicago and you think you're ready to start making some noise, then it's a cute story. You make the playoffs with the young goalie and the young core of all the high draft picks. You maybe force 6-7 games like Carolina did that first year they had Rod, or Toronto did the first year that they made the playoffs with the current group. Then it's a nice story. But if you're the Oilers, if you're the Devils, you can't.
Well, the Oilers need a goalie too, so it makes sense.
They do, but that's the issue. We were talking about this in regards to the Rangers. Like, why would you want to be a first-time head coach and come into the pressure cooker of, if we don't win a championship, it's a failure? I wouldn't want Askarov to end up in a situation like New Jersey, where he doesn't have any NHL experience, and it's kind of a tall order to say, all right, you're going to start 55 games this year, and if we don't at least make the second round of the playoffs, it's a failure of a season for a guy who's never played in the NHL before. That just seems like you're setting the kid up to fail.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a phenomenal idea to kind of just throw this guy in the fire and say, hey, go win us the Stanley Cup. I'm just saying, in terms of if the Predators were to move either goalie right now, for better or for worse, the Predators are allegedly more willing to move Askarov than Soros. So if the Devils want to call Nashville and they're like, hey, we want a goalie, I would have to imagine that Trotz is like, okay, well, you're going to have to give us everything for either goalie, but let's start with Askarov, and UC Soros is untouchable, to my understanding at least, until unless Jack Hughes is involved, which he's not. That's not going to happen. But I would have to think that's the asking point for Juuse Saros. He's that good of a goaltender, and that's how much Nashville values him as a player on their team. So I just don't see the Predators being involved in any trade with the Devils right now. And it's Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, if they really have faith in John Gibson, then maybe he's the plan B. Maybe if CVY says, I want Connor Hellebuyck, let's go trade for him. Maybe they go for John Gibson as a plan B, but Nashville's going to be a tough cookie to crack if you're in New Jersey.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a world in which that's doable for them. The Devils are in a weird spot. They definitely should upgrade on goalie. I know there was the Frank Saravelli report today that the Devils want to put Akira Schmidt back for more seasoning. So they definitely need to go out and get another goalie for their mix, even if it's not a high-end starter. They need at least a 1B that can work with Vanacek, which worked okay for them last year, that 1A, 1B system, which for considering what the Devils were the year before, where they started 8 different goalies and they had the worst goaltending in the league, going from 890 to 907, that's a big leap. And it's part of why the Devils were able to make such a big leap in 1 year.
Well, when you have a goalie that can stop a beach ball, you tend to win more games. That's just the nature of hockey, is no matter how good your team is in front of you, if you have a goaltender that struggles to make the big save when they need to make a big save, or lets in a bad goal that leads to a bad loss, and that's how you lose a series, that's always tough. No matter how offensively gifted your team is, no matter how solid your blue line is, if your goalie can't make routine saves or lets up a bad goal in a bad moment, and that's how you lose, it's not a recipe for success. So for the Devils, and Akira Schmidt, to his credit, he played well. The Rangers kind of didn't do a whole lot to make him do things in the playoffs. But, the Devils are looking for a top-tier goaltender. Now, is that going to be Hellebuyck? Is that going to be John Gibson? Did they give Barrett a call? That all remains to be seen. We kind of don't know the answer to that right now. It's July 10th. There's a lot of time before October, before the trade, before training camp and preseason and all that starts. But I would have to think that Tom Fitzgerald is on the phones right now, kind of talking about potential options. Maybe there's a surprise goalie that's on the market that we don't know about, but I would have to, especially if the report from Saravelli is true, that the Devils want to put Akira Schmidt back in the AHL. Okay, well then you need a goalie. You need someone that's going to start games. If Akira Schmidt's in the AHL, well, someone's going to start, and that's on Fitzgerald to get it done.
So, going off of what you were just saying, that I think is worth repeating before we move on and start actually talking about the Rangers specifically, which we have a few things to talk about. I just think it's so hard to make any type of impactful move after the first week of July, because all these GMs just throw money at mediocre and average players. And this offseason in particular, it's weird because you have several guys who are opting for the 1-year deal on the idea that the cap is going to jump up significantly next year. And it makes sense for them to go on a 1 or 2. Even DeBrincat only signed for 4 years, which is really short for somebody who's a restricted free agent, close to, if not at the prime of their career already. So it's a real challenge. I mean, we were talking about it in regards to the Rangers, maybe finding a way to get Tarasenko back in the mix now that he's changed agents and that deal with Carolina might not come to fruition anymore. But the Rangers are unwilling to admit defeat, make a little cap space by buying someone out or trading somebody. And now they're in a situation where they have to bargain shop because they've forced themselves into a corner.
Well, they did. The Rangers did that, with the Blake Wheeler signing, with a couple of bottom 6 signings like Nick Bonino and things like that, and they don't have the money to go sign Vladimir Tarasenko. Now, again, the smart thing would have been to either trade Barclay Goodrow for pennies on the dollar, sure, or to buy him out in the first buyout window, because the Rangers don't have, they have a second buyout window. The problem is that they can't buy out. Eligible. They can't buy out Barclay Goodrow during this period because this, for those that don't know, the second window is open to players that make over $4 million a year, and Barclay Goodrow makes 3.6, so he's not eligible to be bought out at this juncture. So right now, the Rangers can only trade him. So clearly they like him and they like the contract and they want to keep him, because if they didn't want to keep him, they would have dealt him for a seventh round pick or something like that, at this stage of the game. Like they didn't want to do that. They kept him instead. So now they don't have money to sign Tarasenko. There was a report from somebody earlier today that was like, oh, I talked to somebody that was Sean Simpson. I found that tweet as I was trying to filibuster for a little bit. Sean Simpson said, just spoke to a friend in St. Louis who knows the Blues very well. I'm not sure I've ever heard more bad things about a player than what we said about Tarasenko. Quote, this is the last thing the Sens need, which I think is hilarious, especially because Scott Wheeler quote tweeted it and said, and he put a screenshot of essentially the polar opposite of people like raving about this guy. So whoever said that to Sean Simpson is like trying to get a dig into him. Like, I don't know what that, like, that whole weird situation is like going on with Tarasenko and the Ottawa Senators. But like, he wanted to come back to New York. It's not like he wanted to move on and that was it. He wants to be a Ranger. The Rangers don't have the cap space. They do if they move Barclay Goodrow. But instead, they want to have 9 bottom 6 guys. So, Christopher, I don't know what to tell you.
That's really what it comes down to. It's the prioritization of Gaudreau's intangibles versus what Tarasenko can bring tangibly. So, speaking of Tarasenko, somebody who you and I were both very satisfied when they brought him in because he filled a glaring need. This is a team with not a lot of guys who just want to let it rip. And Tarasenko at this point of his career is a supporting role guy. He gets the puck, he shoots the puck. He's got decent positioning still. He's an okay skater, not as dynamic as he used to be. He can't really make guys miss the way he used to. But the hands, the puck skills, that's still there. And he filled a void that the Rangers needed. They needed guys who were just willing to let it rip. I think it's really interesting that the best we've seen of Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad during their tenure together was with Frank Vatrano playing with them, because he was the one guy who was just willing to let it rip. Anytime the puck was on Frankie V's stick, okay, I'll shoot it. If you don't want to shoot it, I'll shoot it. As opposed to what they've kind of been with at times where, Kane, who wanted to facilitate more than shoot, guys like Gaudreau and Vesey, who don't have the toolboxes to be up there, Kakko, who still isn't decisive enough to shoot, Lafreniere, who's more of a playmaker than a shooter. So I think the fact that the Rangers, again, they went for Blake Wheeler, and they're going to go with Kakko, and then either Kreider or Lafreniere will get an opportunity on the opposite side to balance out the lineup a little bit more. I just feel like you're leaving something on the table here when you know what's worked with those guys in the past. Even Buchnevich at his best, he's more of a facilitator than a shooter. It's just they had a good synergy off of each other that eventually one of them would shoot because they had the puck for so long when Buchnevich, Kreider, and Zibanejad were out there together. Now we're kind of at this in-between where they don't really have ideal skill sets to match up with Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin, and then with Trocheck. They've just got a bunch of guys. And we're about to start talking about the offense this past year and maybe some ways they might be able. But I just think it's crazy that you.
We're losing you a little bit, Nick. We are losing you a little bit. Nick, I believe we have lost you. But yeah, I mean, the thing about thing about Tarasenko is that, like, he, like you said, and I agree with what you said, he's still somebody that is a shoot first kind of guy, and that's exactly what the Rangers needed. Like they needed that guy that would just be like, you know what, I have the puck, I'm throwing it on the net, see you later. Like that's what the Rangers need, because as we've witnessed over the course of the past few years now, Zibanejad doesn't shoot at 5-on-5. Kreider is he's one of the best deflection guys of all time. Like he's so incredibly skilled at parking in front of the goalie and tipping pucks past them. He's really good at that. He has a tremendous shot that he never uses. My man's never shoots the puck. Like, I don't know. I don't know, like,
who the rush. That's really the only time he shoots is when they have those odd man rushes, and that's one of the things we talk about is how stabilize? How consistent can you be when that's your main bread and butter as a team, is creating off the rush? I mean, you and I were both very high on the Devils this year, and you saw what happened when they played against a team that took away the rush. And Carolina's an exception to the rule. Carolina's are probably the best defensive team in the entire league. So maybe you take that with a grain of salt because Carolina's so good defensively. But Carolina took away New Jersey's speed, and New Jersey didn't really have an answer after that. So let's start here. And I'm going to do it this way because if I try and pull it up through Restream, it might crash because of how fickle the internet has been. But this is the heat map for this past season. The red, that's good. That's where the Rangers are shooting. The blue, that's where the Rangers aren't shooting from. You'll see really quickly that they like shooting where? The cross crease pass. You and I talk about this all the time, Andrew. They love that cross seam pass. And when that's not there, they don't have anything else. You see that concentration of blue in the middle of the circles. And then at the point, not a lot of chances from there, not a lot of chances from there. The bulk of the Rangers scoring opportunities at 5-on-5 are at that net mouth. They are
now where in that visualization is Jacob Trouba missing the net? I just need to know where that is.
He does not shoot enough to register on that. In all honesty, the closest you can get is that tiny little blip. That would be the one exception to Trouba's rule. But you see, this is an interesting point we can talk about. When we talked about the defense a few weeks ago, we said they played way too much defense, and that's part of the volume issue. That speaks to what you just asked about Trouba. Where's Trouba's shot on that? They don't shoot enough because he doesn't shoot enough to register on there because they don't have the puck in the offensive zone enough when he's on the ice. And this is something we can talk about a little more in depth, that just when the only time the Rangers are really able to maintain zone time offensively is
Nick, I believe we have lost you again. We have lost you, Nick. Yeah, I mean the thing about Jacob Trouba, we've talked about this for weeks. For 59 episodes, we've talked about Jacob Trouba and how he plays the game of hockey for $8 million a year. The great offense is a great defense, and a great defense leads to a good offense. So the part of the problem of Jacob Trouba not being on that viz is the puck is a lot of the time in the defensive zone for the Rangers. So how can Jacob Trouba then turn around and get the puck on the net if all of a sudden, like the puck is like he's always defending? So how can he generate offense if the puck is, in his own zone and he's trying to get it out of there? So part of the issue of that viz for the Rangers is, okay, we generate a lot of that cross-ice pass. We absolutely adore that, and there is allegedly no other plan B on the entire planet of, hey, maybe shoot from elsewhere. Maybe let's shoot from, not a one-timer. See how that goes. Maybe throw it on net. See what happens. The Pittsburgh Penguins did a really good job with us a few years ago when they won the Cup in 2016, was they would just chuck it on net. They were so good at creating rebounds that they would then attack the net and just dismantle any net front pressure by the defense. A lot of the times, and we saw this in 2017, when they won the second against Nashville, where they bombarded the net with, shots on pads, and then they would just attack the net for rebounds. They would shoot from anywhere, and then they would go after it, just begging the goalie to spit the puck out and make that secondary save. The Rangers do none of that, essentially. The Rangers essentially cherry pick and just hope for the best when it comes to generating that kind of offense. Like they want the highlight reel play. They want the SportsCenter top 10, hey, like, look at this incredible passing play that Mika Zibanejad and Panarin and, whoever did, and Jimmy Vesey or whoever it is, collects the loose change and then scores the goal. Oh, what a beautiful play. The problem is, is that this is the National Hockey League, where things like that don't work 98% of the time. So if that's your number one offensive play and it doesn't work 98% of the time, What else are you doing to generate offense? The problem is that the Rangers don't really have a plan B there. As you saw in Nick's viz, and we'll get Nick back in a second here, you know, the Rangers in red right in front of the net, they love that cross ice pass. They love that. And it's blue essentially everywhere else. Which makes them not only a one-trick pony, it makes them incredibly predictable. Because teams scout other teams. You know, that's not rocket science. This is just this is how the league works. So teams know, because this is not a shocking revelation to anybody that has watched the Rangers play, is that they love to do that. They love to get that odd man rush going, or that that 2-on-2. They'd love to force that pass. They love nothing more than doing that. Teams know that. And teams know that the Rangers will continue to force it if it doesn't work. That's just how the Rangers have been playing. That's just exactly how, they operate, for better or for worse. For sure, because you need more than one way to score goals. But the Rangers, that's what they love doing, and hopefully Peter Laviolette can maybe change that a little bit. Maybe try to get this team to shoot the puck in other areas and be a little bit more creative in terms of how they operate on the offensive end. Because right now, the Devils, that you saw in the playoffs, the Devils absolutely shut down the Rangers offensively, and they were so good speed-wise, and they were so good in their, the Rangers had no answer after I think it was game 2 or whatever it was. The Devils essentially dominated the rest of the series. So, for the Rangers to be more successful offensively, it just boils down to, okay, we could try this once or twice, this cross ice, beautiful, whatever pass, or just do it whenever it makes the most sense. I don't understand the prospects of continuing to force it when it doesn't work. Try something else. The Rangers forced it for a lot of the entire season last year, including the playoffs, where they just loved nothing more than to just keep on trying that pass, and it kept getting denied. They kept trying it, and they would lose games because they would try and do the same thing over and over again, and it wouldn't work. The best offense comes with unpredictability. If the other team cannot predict what you're going to do next, then it is a lot harder for them to stop it, right? With everything else, like if you're able to be read like a children's coloring book, well, guess what? You're not gonna have a whole lot of success. But if one play you try that cross ice pass, it doesn't work, and then the next offensive rush, you try what the Penguins did a few years ago, where you try to shoot it let's say Blake Wheeler is coming in on the rush off on the wing, he shoots it at the goalie's pad, and then Zibanejad comes in as the second player, he comes into the crease, he buries the rebound, and then that's the goal. Like, the Rangers need to find more than one way of creating offense. Now, again, I'm exaggerating a little bit. The Rangers haven't just forced that pass 78 times a game and then just expect it to go into the net. So they've tried, they do other things, but the cross ice force is the number one kind of that's their high danger play, and they don't have a plan B, and they got to fix it. As we welcome Nick back to the show.
Yeah, no, I was talking for a few minutes. I forgot I had my phone on Do Not Disturb. I realized you were frozen, but I wasn't sure if you kept going or if I kept going. And I realized we both kept going on our own, not talking into the ether. So the main thing, and I assume I heard what you were just saying, but the way I like to think about it and the way I explain it to people who kind of understand hockey tactics, kind of understand hockey strategy, I use a football analogy. When another team knows what's coming at them, they're going to dial up their defense. If you send out 2 tight ends and a fullback out there, the defense is going to assume you're running the ball. So the defense is going to bring out linebackers. They're going to bring out an extra down lineman. When you're playing the Rangers, they need to come at you with speed, because if they have to dump and chase on you, or if they have to grind out offense, that's a win for you defensively. If you are going to make the Rangers play not off of the rush. And they were better this past season at generating zone entries, at carrying the puck into the zone than they were the year before. The offense, it's weird because when you look at the micro stats, which is stuff like zone entries, puck recoveries, they look like a better team than they were. But as people who watch them every single game, they didn't look anywhere near middle of the pack in transition. I mean, when you watch them against the Devils, I mean, granted, the Devils is an extreme case because they're so fast, but the good teams are fast. And in today's NHL, you are going to get swallowed up. Even somebody as good as Adam Fox, who is one of, if not the best defenseman in the entire league, he didn't have a great series against the Devils because they made him play faster. And the Rangers are going to have to figure out how they can play faster. And that's really, I don't know if that's something you're going to be able to unlock through just by a coaching change.
And as I talked about, while you're having internet issues, the Rangers need to find more than one way to generate offense because their number one priority is how do we force that cross-ice pass and how do we get it to work? And if it doesn't work, the Rangers do it again. And if it doesn't work again, the Rangers do it again. The biggest way to generate offense is unpredictability, where the other team has no idea what you're going to do next. If you're going to do that cross-ice pass, if you want to do it once or twice, if when it works and there's a clear opening, go ahead and do it. But doing it 87,000 times a game, expecting the pass to go through half of those times, and you scoring 14 goals as a result is something that happens in NHL 23, I guess, but not in the NHL. And teams scout the Rangers. I don't know if you know this, Nick, but other teams watch the Rangers play games. So every other team in the NHL knows, hey, the Rangers love making that pass, and if it's not going for them, they keep forcing it. Like that's been the Rangers' bread and butter, especially last season. The Rangers have to do a better job of opening up their own offense and figuring out, okay, if the cross-ice pass isn't working, do what the Penguins did a few years ago, as I was talking about while you're having issues of, the Penguins, when they won those cups a couple of years ago, they absolutely loved throwing the puck at the goalie's pad or, a shot that was difficult to get a rebound for, and then they would send a secondary player to just crash the net and to put the puck in the back of the net off the rebound. The Penguins love doing that. The Rangers need to incorporate maybe a little bit of that and a little bit of other kind of offense because the cross-ice pass, everybody knows that they're doing it. They got to mix it up.
So one of the things that's really interesting is when you start trying to unpack the bones of this. The way I always talk about it is you have your actual play, blah, 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 your bones, your players. You have your transition play, which is like your muscles and ligaments, how everything moves. And then you got the bullshit that the hockey people talk about with the intangibles and the we know what leadership is, whatever you want to call it. And it's a real challenge to find the right. I think that's really the key that the Rangers have struggled with, especially in terms of their roster construction, is they haven't found the right marriage of talent for each other. We talked about this at the deadline this year, and Ray Ferraro said it himself on the broadcast during Game 1. I like all of the players on the Rangers as individuals. When you start putting them together, you have redundant skill sets. You have a lot of guys who all do the same thing, and that makes it a challenge to find ways to score when it's not going well. And this is something I can tie back to a point I always make, that the Rangers make plays outside of structure. When you have to make plays outside of structure and you don't have anything to fall back on, that's why the Rangers are such a streaky hockey team. When they are playing outside of structure and it is just humming, and Kreider's got 2 deflections, and Zibanejad's got that. Zibanejad beats the goalie on a breakaway, and Fox is getting them out of the zone quick. It's really easy. Or when it's going bad and they get snowballed against bad teams, that's because they don't have anything to fall back on. That's the peril of being a team that relies so much on plays outside of structure, and why it's really going to be on Laviolette to figure out a way to get these guys to play within a system. And this is the biggest point, and I always say this. You have a system, you have a structure, so you have something to fall back on. You always know what your responsibility is if you're playing within structure. It's like, do your job. In this situation, I have the puck. It needs to go here, or it needs to go there. None of the none of the freelance floating that you saw. When did the Rangers get in trouble this year? When their forwards flew the zone too early, the defenseman held the puck a little too long, and they didn't get out of the zone quickly, because that's the Rangers' bread and butter. That quick strike out of the zone, and when it's not there, they don't know what to do.
They need to differentiate their offense. They need to have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. They just need to have a plan. Because a lot of times, and the part of the reason for their lack of plan under Gallant, as we've come to figure out, is that the Rangers didn't practice.
Yeah.
Under like they skated around, waltzed around. They got their, they tied their skates and they did a couple of laps just to show up to the practice and have a cup of coffee and have a laugh and take a couple of shots, and they would go home. The Rangers desperately need structure. They desperately need Peter Laviolette to come in and say, okay, whatever Gerard Gallant did with y'all in practice is done. That's not happening again. We're gonna have rigid practices. This is the plan that I'm setting into place with this, with you guys moving forward. This is what we're going to do, and this is the offensive plays. These are the defensive plays. The transition plays. Everything. This is our plan: A, B, C, D, etc. If Peter Laviolette can come in and do that, that's going to be a massive help to how the Rangers play. Because if their plan A last year didn't work, they didn't know what to do. Yeah. That's why a lot of times, maybe that's why they forced the cross-ice pass a lot of the times, because they didn't know what else to do. They didn't have
a fallback.
They didn't have a fall. Exactly. They didn't have a fallback plan that they could, rely on to be like, okay, the cross ice isn't working, but this play that we worked on in practice, maybe we could pull that out of the hat and try that and see what happens. They never had that because they didn't practice. So now maybe under Laviolette that changes.
So something we were talking about before that I want to pull up a visual for, because this one is actually pretty instructive. So we were talking about how the Rangers are very reliant on transition play, that if they got to get into the zone quickly with possession of the puck so they can look for that cross-seam pass we know they love. The issue with that is the Rangers are here and firmly below average in puck recoveries. Always looks bad when the Rangers get into a game where they really have to forecheck. They are constantly being forced in. And this is something we talked about a lot during the series against the Devils. When you dump the puck in, you have to go and get it. The Rangers did not totally understand the point. They would dump the puck in to absorb the pressure of the oncoming New Jersey Devils defenseman, but then they wouldn't actually go and get it. They would engage with the guy who recovered the puck. They win it themselves and be able to maintain zone time. When the Rangers have sputtered, it's when they do just one and dones. They gain the offensive zone, they get one shot on net, and then the puck goes the other way. And most of those times is not English. Most of the time, the Rangers struggled to find ways to maintain zone time. We talk about it all the time. The reason the kid line was so much fun to watch 2 years ago was they wanted to work for their offense. They would put pressure on the other team's defense. They would cycle. They'd get a look. They'd crash the net afterwards. And it wasn't there this year. That secondary effort, the rebounds, the ugly types of goals it takes to win a championship. So to anyone extent, the talent didn't play particularly well. The talent kind of reinforced all of its existing problems, which is why we harped on Blake Wheeler so much on the Saturday when free agency opened, was they already have guys who do what Blake Wheeler does. We're bringing in another guy is not going to reinforce the already existing bad habits. They already have 4 guys who give them nothing defensively and are mediocre play drivers at 5-on-5. Adding one more guy who's bad defensively and mediocre at 5-on-5, it defeats the point, and it's why it feels so kind of self-defeating. What was I going to? Oh, the last point I want to get in before I throw it over back to you. If the Rangers are gonna find a way, it's gonna start with less defense, like we said. And it's going to have to come from one of the guys who has not reached their full potential yet. And that's kind of the elephant in the room we're kind of all at. Because Kakko and Lafreniere are useful hockey players. They're useful. They're not bad. Lafreniere, all the even strength points. Kakko is legitimately I won't say elite, but a very good defensive forward. They need more from those guys. They need one of those guys to be a 65, 70-point guy this season if the Rangers are going to make a leap. Because it's great that Blake Wheeler's here and he had 55 points last year. But if Blake Wheeler puts up 70 points this year, I'm going to assume it was mostly on the power play and the Rangers weren't that good of a hockey team.
And that's the fear of, that we have coming into the season, is that they didn't address what the issues of the roster are. They brought in another guy who is too slow and relies on other people and, can get points on the power play and do all these things. But like, the Rangers desperately in their top six need a play driver at 5-on-5 that will shoot the puck. They desperately need a shoot first, get out of my way, I'm going to make offense happen kind of guy. And the Rangers, and I understand, the Rangers don't have a lot of cap space to go out and acquire somebody like that. They could have made the cap space for, they could have moved out players that we've already talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks. They could have moved Barclay Goodrow. They should have moved Jacob Trouba. Now, I understand like how much he quote unquote means to the locker room, captaincy, all that, but they could have moved his contract. They could have made Jacob Trouba plus Barclay Goodrow is $11.6 million. Are you telling me that you couldn't find a play driver and a top four defenseman with that kind of money?
The Rangers also don't have any assets left. That's the other issue.
No. Well, they traded a lot more than they should have for Patrick Kane. Let's if we're gonna go back to assets for a second. Patrick Kane said, "I want the Rangers, or I'm not going anywhere." And the Rangers were like, "Bet, here's a second round pick. Like, here's all these other picks, and now we could get Patrick Kane." Why? For what? Like, what was the purpose of overpaying for Patrick Kane? Like, his hip aside, his atrocious defense aside, his bad skating aside, he only wanted to go to New York, and the Rangers still overpaid for him, which doesn't make any sense to me. But the Rangers didn't have a whole lot of assets before that Patrick Kane trade, so it's not as if that one trade, totally emptied the cupboards, but it didn't help.
They don't have any great prospects to trade. That's more along the lines of what I meant. Like, their best prospect right now is Brennan Othmann, who probably won't be ready for the NHL this year, at least at the start. He might get in games at some point during the season, and that's great and all. But if they didn't have time for the first and second overall picks to develop, because this is a win-now team, you're going to tell me 3 years later they're going to have time for Brennan Othmann to figure it out, that he's going to be given opportunities to make mistakes, that the coach after Peter Laviolette is going to be the one that unlocks Brennan Othmann's game, because that's realistically, in my mind, this is all a foregone conclusion, unfortunately. But that's the fatalist in me. In regards to just understanding the Rangers' issues offensively, I think the way to think about it is that team that plays entirely too much defense. When you play that much defense, you don't if the Rangers are more efficient, they don't even need to be better. They just need to be more efficient. If the Rangers is going to by osmosis lead to offense, it's simply playing less defense.
The Rangers so desperately, like, the thing about offense in hockey, but in any sport really, soccer, say kind of thing. If the puck or the ball or whatever is always in your zone, how on earth are you going to score goals? That's the number one thing that teams and players and coaches and everybody in the organization has to think about when they're constructing their roster is, okay, we have this money allocation, we have these spots that we have to fill. Which players can we go out and acquire that will prevent us from playing more defense? Because again, like, if the puck is in your own zone 80% of the time, 85% of the time, where is the offense going to come from? If you can't get the puck out of your own zone, how are you then going to generate the offense that you need in order to win hockey games? No matter how good, you can have prime Dominik Hasek in net for you, but if you never score goals for Dominik Hasek, you are going to lose games. Like, at a certain point, the puck has to go the other way. At a certain point, there has to be guys on your team that can take the puck, that can skate out of the zone, and that can generate offense at 5-on-5. Generating offense on the power play is a lot easier. There's one less guy for the team on the ice. It's a lot easier to set up, in the offensive zone. The other team is less likely to pressure you because you have one extra player. So if there's a player on the other team that is going to pressure the puck carrier, and that pressure fails, then there's a lot of open space for them to operate. So there's it's a lot easier to generate offense that way. At 5-on-5, it's not easy. You need players that can find those seams and make it work. That can somehow find a way to generate the offense. And that is where the Rangers lack in that regard. They rely too much on the power play. They don't generate a lot of 5-on-5 offense. And what do you know? They got dumpstered in the first round because their power play couldn't get going and they couldn't score 5-on-5. So they didn't fix the issue again. Like, as we said, like, they didn't have the cap space to make it to go out and, let's say, get Alex DeBrincat or somebody like that. But they could have. They chose not to.
Bro, I would have been happy with Nino Niederreiter.
Yeah, Nino Niederreiter would have been great. Like, they chose not to make these moves. Okay, well, now this is your bed. Now lay in it. I believe we have lost Nick once again. This is who the Rangers are, and for better or for worse, probably for worse because they don't have 5-on-5 play drivers. But this is it. This is the team, and Blake Wheeler is great. He's fine. He's gonna get his points, as we talked about a week before. Like, is he going to move the needle for this team? Is it going to be the reason the Rangers go from a first-round exit to a second-round exit or a third-round exit or beyond? It's just probably not. They have their clear issues, and they fix none of them.
So I'll leave you with this. This is the last thing I want to talk about. We are on. So Kreider and Zibanejad got put together for the first time under Alain Vigneault. That is 6 years ago. They were together under David Quinn. They were together under Gerard Gallant. All three of those coaches spent ample time complaining about his team overpassing, not playing the way the coach wants them to play. I struggle to believe that a coach is going to get a 30-year-old Zibanejad and a 32-year-old Kreider to play any differently than they've played together at any point in the last 6 years. I struggle to get there. Maybe Laviolette's the guy. Maybe the Rangers just haven't had real practice in 3 years. Maybe that's the key. Maybe the Rangers just really need a coach who's going to work them hard, make them practice, pretend to be Herb Brooks and Miracle, really kind of instill some discipline in this group, and maybe they unlock something else. But we've had three different coaches with vastly different philosophies all come in, and the same problem persists where if they don't create off the rush and they don't create on the power play, they got nothing. And we're 6 years into this now with this group, with different coaches and different combinations of supporting cast. Remember, when Panarin first got here, they wanted to play him with Zibanejad, and they did it for a week. And then they went back to Kreider and Zibanejad, and Panarin started playing in the second line. And then they traded for Ryan Strome in like November of that season or December of that season. And really quickly, you start talking to yourself, well, it hasn't worked all of this time. Is a guy who's been coaching for 20-something years and has won Stanley Cup to show for it and kind of got a similar group in terms of veteran composition with moderate expectations. It's a little bit different in Washington because they won their cup already, but not with him. But that a similar makeup of a lot of veteran guys who you're not going to be able to get them to change. You're not going to get Ovi to back check. You're not going to get John Carlson to play good defense. I'm supposed to believe that coach who just struggled in that environment is going to be able to get vastly different results from this group.
At the end of the day, and this is the last thing I'll say about that, it's just like, there's only so much a coach can do. There's only so much, like a GM can do, and it's at this point, it's up to Zibanejad, it's up to not Tarasenko, it's up to Panarin, it's up to Kreider to change. Like, it is up to them as individuals to be like, okay, for the past, however many years it's been, we've passed the puck too much. We've been too passive on the offense. We haven't shot the puck as much. It is on them as individuals to try to change their own play for the better. Peter Laviolette probably won't be able to do it. The next head coach probably won't do it. Stan Bowman probably can't do it. Like, there's the prime insert name here probably can't do it. Like, it's up to the players themselves.
That includes Mike Keenan. That includes Mark Messier.
Right. Yeah. Mark Messier wouldn't be able to fix this team either. Like, it is up to the players themselves. No matter how, Mark Messier can bring in the ring and bring in the cup and do all these things. That won't make Zibanejad shoot the puck. I don't care what Rangers Facebook has to say about that. Like, at a certain point, Zibanejad and the players and those top 6 guys that are on the ice for the most amount of time, they have to step up and say, okay, these are our deficiencies, and this is what we are going to do to address them. If they don't do that, no coach is going to fix it.
It's all moot at that point, yeah. The players are good. They don't fit together. That's kind of the issue. That's what we've been saying for a while now. That the Rangers are very talented on an individual basis. They just don't complement each other well, and they're asking guys to play a little bit above their weight. I was talking about it over the weekend with one of my friends who, he said, and I'm going to quote what Ryan said, Trocheck's a good hockey player. If he's the third line center on your team, you're probably going to win the Stanley Cup. He is comparable to what Yanni Gourde was for the Lightning 3 years ago. Really good two-way player, no elite traits, just really good at everything. If he's your secondary supporting cast, he's down your lineup like what he was for Carolina, and that should have been the red flag, and we can end on this note. When teams like Carolina, who operate with a ruthless, cutthroat financial motive in all of their roster decisions, this guy's not good enough to play that high in our lineup, you should be able to acknowledge, hey, if they don't think this guy can do it, why should we? Like, the Rangers are supposed to be this beacon of, Original Six, New York City, long checkered history. The Carolina Hurricanes said Vinny Trocheck wasn't good enough to be our second-line center. To play other guys ahead of him on the depth chart. Hurricanes, who have won Stanley Cup in their franchise's history and are less than 30 years old, are saying a guy isn't good enough for that role. Why are you thinking you're going to be able to do better than that? And that a part of that is just hubris that the Rangers think they're always right. But you look at the teams like Carolina, like Colorado, like Tampa, they know when to move on from their guys. They do not hang on to guys for too long, and they are willing. Like, think about Ross Colton. Ross Colton's a useful hockey player. The Rangers would play that guy on the second line as he's tall and he hits people. Ross Colton is a third or fourth liner on a good team. The Rangers are asking Trocheck, who's a third liner, to be a second liner. They are asking Kakko and Lafreniere, who have yet to get any substantial power play time, to be 65, 70-point guys on a good team. They are asking Blake Wheeler to not stink defensively and give them something offensively. They are asking Panarin to start shooting the puck, even though he hasn't done it in 2 years. When Panarin first got here, he let it rip. He had 28 goals his first year here. There's a reason I was arguing he should have won the Hart Trophy that first year. He was that damn good. He's entirely shied away from that in the 2 years since. He does not let it rip anymore. And we're really at an inflection point where the veteran core is old. I mean, I saw our buddy Rick Carpinello sarcastically saying, weren't the Rangers one of the youngest teams in the league this morning because they're like the third or fourth oldest team in the league now, even though the coach Carp spent his entire tenure defending is a joke and coaching the Sharks now, even though that guy who we didn't have time for those young guys to make mistakes, but everything is fine. That's what blows my mind. Arthur Staples saying the Rangers don't have any needs. How did he write the Rangers don't have any needs? If you want to say they don't have the cap space to add anybody, that's one thing.
Yeah.
To say the Rangers don't have any needs and that it's on the coach to get more out of this group, I mean, are we in fantasy land?
The thing about writing something like that, and we'll end on this, is that it's just easy to do.
Yeah.
It's easy to say the Rangers don't have needs because you know, if you're critical of the organization, such as the Rangers, they don't let you, they don't let you in, right? Like it's a back and forth of, hey, if it's all hunky dory, then the Rangers will keep giving you access. But as soon as there's a problem, Rangers take that away from you, and that's one of the negatives about trying to cover this team, is that if you are honest about the things that they need, they don't like that. They want all positivity all the time. So, and I'm not saying, the Rangers reached out to Arthur Sable and were like, you better be positive about this team. Like, I don't think that happened. But overall, if you watch this team long enough and your takeaway is that they don't need any help and that like they're fine and they're cup contenders.
Blake Wheeler's a great ad. Blake Wheeler's a great ad.
Buddy. Let me tell you something. We're watching two different teams because the Rangers don't shoot the puck and they got nobody this offseason that shoots the puck, and they essentially, traded Patrick Kane, who can't skate, can't defend, for Blake Wheeler, a guy who can't skate, can't defend. All right, great. I'm super happy. Like the bottom six has improved. The bottom six with the Nick Bonino signings and and all these guys, it's a lot better than Jake Buncheletter's getting skating cardio time and all these things. Like at the very least, the bottom six, I will say I would much rather guys like Nick Bonino getting ice time than Jake Buncheletter's. But the thing about the top six, you switch out Patrick Kane for Blake Wheeler, it's the same guy. Maybe a better individual off the ice, but the same guy essentially. So same guy on the ice. So the Rangers don't have needs. All right, sure, whatever. Eat Arby's.
You know what's gonna be my last straw is when they sign Patrick Kane in December. They LTIR him and break him out of the glass the first week of the playoffs, and he's got absolutely nothing left because he's 34 years old with a fake hip. And the Rangers are again mystified why he wasn't particularly good, even though he won all those games 10 years ago. That's going to be the ultimate kick in the balls, and that'll be my last straw when they bring in Patrick Kane and LTIR him, because the GM is convinced that because he was good as an American 10 years ago, he's got to be on this team because the Rangers have this weird obsession with guys from North America, which is really all I can say at this point. Like the propaganda this week, the pictures of Jonathan Quick, those pictures are from the early 90s. I don't care that Jonathan Quick was a Ranger fan 30 years ago. He didn't force his way here like Adam Fox did. Adam Fox using his fandom and leveraging his way here, that's great. Jonathan Quick didn't give a shit. The Rangers were just a team that was willing to give him an offer, and it was convenient because he gets to live closer to home now. He doesn't care. If he really cared, he would have gotten here a lot sooner. Don't give me any of that crap.
I agree.
All right, let's get out of here. Sorry about the internet. I'm at my girlfriend's house. Internet kind of spotty. All right, I will see you guys. We'll see you guys next week. We're gonna have to start getting resourceful because now we're kind of in the middle of July and there's a lot less to talk about. So if you have any great ideas,
we'll figure things out and we'll get Nick better internet. How's that?
Yeah, well, usually I'm at home and I have my computer plugged into the router so I don't have internet issues unless there's like actual outages, in which case then there's nothing I can do. Right. We'll play Dooku for Tech-Toe next week, where you got to strategically try and block each other. We can do that.
Yeah.
5 minutes at least. We can do 5 minutes of that. All right. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. We're on all the major podcasting platforms. We're over on YouTube as well. Over on YouTube, we got the added value. Usually got graphics and visuals to kind of illustrate points a little bit better. I was doing the John Madden thing with a pencil pointing on a screen today. That was kind of fun. We'll see you guys next week. Be safe, all that. See you guys then.
Later.